Yes. Don't have to get out of there. All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Sweetwater City Council to order, and I'll ask Ollie Wilburn with Rima Valley Church to give the invocation, and Councilman Castro will lead us in the pledges.
Heavenly Father, we bless you for this day. We thank you, Lord, for the rain you've blessed our land with. We thank you for wisdom upon this council. We thank you, Lord, for your grace upon our fire chief and police chief. We thank you, Lord, for to continue to bless this community with your presence, most of all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join in the pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, we'll now move to item 4, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of minutes for meeting held on May the 9th.
Move adoption of the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Okay. Item 5 calls for public input. At this time, anyone is allowed to speak on any matter other than personal matters or matters under litigation for a length of time not to exceed 3 minutes. No council discussion or action may be placed on the matter until such matter has been placed on an agenda and posted. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am. If you would go to the mic, if you would, please, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Kathy Kirby, and my husband was buried out here at the cemetery 2 years ago in March 21. And I asked about pouring a curb around the plot, and I was told, no, you can't do that. But other people out there have put fences up around their plots, have put gravel down, have put cinder block, and done everything they wanted to do to their loved one's plot. But I was told, no, you can't do that. Even though there's no grass to mow in that area where he is. There's just dirt and weeds. I just wanted his place to look nice. He's a Vietnam vet, and he was very particular about how his yard looked. And I can't imagine. He's just got dirt out there. I just want it to look nice for him. And I have pictures, if you would like to see them, of what it looks like out there where he's buried, so you can see what's going on. Would you like to look at them?
You can leave them for yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, we'll now move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are items that are considered routine and may be passed with one vote. Any councilman or member of the public may ask that any consent agenda item be moved to the regular agenda for discussion. Do we have any council member or members of the public that wish to move a consent item to the regular agenda? Okay. Do we have a motion for items 6A through 6C?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried and approved. That took care of you, Nancy.
That was easy.
Thanks, ma'am. Okay, we'll now move to the regular items. Item 7D, which is discuss, consider, and act upon final acceptance and release of retainage funds for the Highland Pump Station Standby Generator Project.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Morning.
Good to see everybody. In your packet there, you should have copies of the closeout documents for this project. I've also provided, here is the recommendation for final acceptance. This project has been successfully completed by Daltech Specialty Contractors. They have provided the closeout documents, and it is our recommendation at this time to final accept the project and approve release of retainage money. The retainage amount is $8,148.50.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Thanks, sir. Okay, we'll now move to item 7E, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval to purchase equipment associated with development of the lead service line replacement inventory required by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality.
On this item, refers back to the previous item we discussed in a past council meeting about the lead service line inventory required by TCEQ. That is required, the inventory is required to be completed by October 16th of 2024. So several entities in this area and that we're working with on the funding are applying for funds to buy a vacuum trailer to help identify pothole those utility lines and help identify and develop that inventory. So the application we submitted on behalf of the city includes funding for one of those trailers. The issue is the timing. Those funds, when approved, or if approved, will not be available until early of next year, about March of next year. So what is being requested at this point in time is the approval to go ahead and pre-purchase that equipment for reimbursement through that funding process. What is included in the application is about $100,000 for that equipment. The most recent quotes have been $78,000. So there's more than enough in that funding application to reimburse those costs. If approved, there is a process that we will help the city through to procure that equipment. You have to do your advertisements. You have to do all this different documentation so that you will be qualified to get reimbursement when the funds are approved. But we will help the city through doing that. Are there any questions? I believe in your packet should be kind of a photo of the typical trailer setup. There's different vendors out there. What we'll do is assist the city in developing an RFP package. So you'll advertise that, then these vendors will submit their package and their pricing on these different pieces of equipment, and then the city would have the opportunity to select what's the best interest of the city.
Move approval of the purchase of the equipment discussed.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Now move to item 7F, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of change order number 2 for the meter replacement and AMI contract.
My turn again.
Your turn again.
Okay, this item has to do with the current the ongoing meter replacement project, and I'm looking for my change order sheet. It's the last page. Okay. So what we're encountering is out in the field, there's over 4,000 different meters that we're going out there and replacing, and some of them are a little different sizes than what has been in city records. Some are 1 inch and some instead of 5/8, and so what we're doing is having to add quantity to the contract at this point in time. So this change order will add $22,900 to the contract. Now what we're anticipating is once the project is complete, there will be another change order, which will be a quantity rectification where we'll have some deducts to offset some of these increases. This change order also adds 60 days to the contract. Contractor's having a little bit of trouble getting the 2-inch meters, just material delays, blah, blah, blah. We're facing that on everything. Just taking a little bit longer to get that. But they are approximately 90% complete, I believe. And so we anticipate them wrapping up in the next 30 days, pending them getting these additional 2-inch meters and then getting those in the ground. So everything is rolling well, and we're looking forward to completion here in the next couple of months.
Make a motion, we accept the change order.
Second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move to item 7G, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approving and accepting funds from the MDD to assist with the demolition of the burnt structure at 110 Pecan Street.
So yesterday, during our MDD meeting, the board passed Resolution 2023-003 that approved a grant in the amount of $124,900, which is the lowest bid that the city has received from AML Environmental to assist with this project. Any questions?
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve and accept the funding for the MDD, from the MDD to assist with the demolition of the burnt structure at 110 Pecan Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. Now move to item 7H, which is discuss, consider, and act upon accepting low bid from AML Environmental for the cleanup of property located at lots 16, 17, and 18, Block 21, original town of Sweetwater, Texas, Nolan County, and commonly identified as 110 Pecan Street, Sweetwater, Texas.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now move to item 7I, which is to enter into public hearing and to consider and discuss guidelines and criteria for tax abatement.
Move we enter public hearing.
One second.
Who did the second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against this item? Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now move to item 7J, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approving guidelines and criteria for tax abatement. Any questions for Misha? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the guidelines, criteria for tax abatement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now move to item 7K, which is discuss, consider, and act upon awarding bids for asphalt type CRS2, CRS2P, fog seal, and grade 4 crushed rock to be used for the fiscal year 2023 streets coat sealing project. Any questions?
I make a motion, we consider and act upon awarding bids for asphalt type CRS2, CRS-2P, fog seal, and grade 4 crushed rock to be used for the fiscal year 2023 street seal coating project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. Now move to item 7L, which is discuss, consider, and award bid for Sweetwater Airport fixed base operator service beginning July 1st, 2023. Any questions for Lynn?
I'll make a motion, we award the bid for Sweetwater Airport fixed base operator services beginning July 1st, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Now move to item 7M, which is discuss, consider, and act upon a resolution adopting guidelines for filming in the city of Sweetwater and authorizing the city manager to undertake the action contemplated therein, including establishing rate schedule within the city manager's discretion. Any questions for Karen or Jeff?
Are we having requests?
There is, there's just talk at, several have come through the WASP Museum. And there's one out there right now that, of course, have reached out to the WASP. They were at the reunion, not this year, but last year, talking about a mini-series based on Jackie Cochran's life. And at first it was they were just gonna do pieces out of the airport, but the last I had heard in just discussion around that the script is out for sale to be bought by a filmmaking company, and they're hoping, the writers are hoping more parts of Sweetwater to be used than just pieces out there at the landing strip. So, but anyway, it puts us in that database and opens the door for more to be interested.
Move adoption of the guidelines for filming inside the city of Sweetwater.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. Now read the resolution into the record. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Sweetwater, Texas, adopting guidelines for filming in the City of Sweetwater and authorizing the city manager to undertake the actions contemplated therein, including establish rate schedules within the city manager's discretion. City manager's report.
Yes, sir, I got a couple of items. 4th of July Sparks in the Park will be held on July 4th. That's a Tuesday this year. And any kind of, if you're willing to be able to be a sponsor, please contact Karen over at the Chamber. I think you guys are still looking for sponsors on that. Good. So that's all I have on that one. The Neighborhood Refresh Project, this is a unique and a good project for the city. It's been very successful. We had 2 neighborhood street areas in Sunnyvale and Fisher that were walked on May 13th. A major effort was held at 1403 Sunnyvale, our good friends over at 1403 Sunnyvale. Earlier that week, Tonkawa on June 9th. Ongoing monthly bulk neighborhood pickups on part of Solid Waste to partner with this effort. So we've got a lot of partners, a lot of good partners that we've partnered with that have been really good to work with. And I think we're making great strides in trying to help clean up our neighborhoods. We are starting at the neighborhood level, and it's been a success so far, and this project will continue. And then we also had Lynn Barrett. I want to introduce Lynn to the council and to the group. Lynn's been here a little over a month, and she's really hit the ground running. She's done some fabulous things so far, and we hope we hope and expect that continues. So Lynn, welcome to the team. You've been a great addition to it, and welcome to Sweetwater.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thanks, sir. All right, we'll now move on to the budget workshop, which is to hear water utility presentations will be presented by Ms. Sanders.
May I interrupt just a minute? Did you need to get these photographs back?
Do you want these?
I'll look at them.
Yes, ma'am, we will. I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, just take your time.
Okay.
All right. So this is our opportunity here to kind of walk through some of the improvements and projects ongoing on the water utilities department. This here, can I borrow this? Oh. Sorry about that, minor technical difficulty, but we should be good to go now. Okay, update on the utility system projects. Here's kind of an outline of what we'll cover and go through. And touch on the high spots. There's a lot of information in here. If you have any questions as we go through it, please let me know. Just going to start off here with the water supply status. We've done this in past years, showing kind of what the status is at the surface water sources. As you'll see there, Oak Creek Lake is at 44% currently. Last year at this time it was 61%, and 21 it was 75%. That's not headed in the right direction, but we are ready for a rainfall whenever the good Lord is ready. So as we know, we've looked at this in the past. It is a cyclical trend. Here's some photos that kind of show a big difference in 19 and 23, and we are ready for a rain. This is the cyclical process that I've mentioned. Usually it's about every 7 years or so that we see a big influx in rainfall into the lakes, and it's shown here on this graph. Here's the water surface levels as reported by the USGS. They're at Oak Creek. Some more photos. In 22, we're at 7.25 feet below the spillway, and then 12.44 right now. There's the floating pump station that was installed several years ago that intakes water into the actual intake structure. One of the benefits of that is it's always taking water off of the top, which is a higher quality water, which helps, in the end, helps in the treatment process. If you will recall, we presented the conjunctive use study a couple of council meetings ago, and what that did was kind of looked at the balance between surface water and groundwater. Sweetwater is somewhat unique in this part of the world, having both a surface water source and a groundwater source, and it really is a benefit, something that other cities in this area don't have. One of the primary items that come out of that report is to increase production out of the surface water source and let the groundwater sources kind of relax and recharge over the upcoming years. The recommendation is 1.7 million gallons a day out of over a 5-day period out of the surface water treatment plant. What that results in is 13 hours a day over a 5-day period. Eddie and his guys, Eddie and Justin, looked at how to do that most cost effectively. Obviously that's additional run hours, and they were able to come up with a good solution through automation and having the plant run through automated features using SCADA improvements. That cost was about $33,000, but it also reduced having to hire additional staff, and it reduced overtime hours, and so additional staff is not needed, and it really no need to reduce staffing. It's this upgrade in automation has been a very impressive feature, what they have done. And to be honest, we've seen it in other water plants, and it cost a lot more than how they got it done. So that was a very cost-effective improvement. Same information here, just a little bit more detail, and showing that the existing operations staff is necessary for the maintenance and the laboratory analytical work and ensuring regulatory compliance and monitoring, and that the automation that was done does not eliminate the need for operator positions. The well static levels, with that increase at the surface water treatment plant, it does allow the groundwater to recharge somewhat. And I've got the blend there. Right now, we're looking at about 57% of the finished water comes from the surface water treatment plant and 43% from the groundwater. And I would say, as of last year and the years before, that was probably switched. Wasn't that right? That kind of so we've increased a little bit on the surface water treatment plant. So ongoing repairs out in the system. The crews fixed 79 leaks last year. That's an ongoing effort to save the water that the city has. Obviously, you have it in the supply side. It gets treated, it gets pumped out in distribution, and we want to do everything we can to reduce the number of leaks and the water loss. The city's done a great job over the past years improving the distribution system, replacing water lines, and that's an ongoing effort. There's funds available currently for the Water Development Board projects that will continue to replace water lines. The AMI meter replacement system, that doesn't necessarily reduce water loss, but what it does is it accurately measures the amount of water that is consumed by the customer. And the city doesn't want to overcharge, doesn't want to undercharge, just want to be fair and accurate and correctly meter the water that's going through out into the distribution system. Preventative maintenance, that's an ongoing process. The city here in Sweetwater is really good at doing that. Pump and motor maintenance and the wellhead rehabs. The well field, over time, those wells and those casing pipes become blinded. They kind of, the water flow coming in, the recharge is reduced. You've got to go in there and rehab those wells routinely. And the city has a good routine process for doing that. Optimization efforts, obviously we want to be cost effective in doing in everything we do. With the increased treatment at the water treatment plant, there's going to be a need for additional chemical, so it's critical to do proper testing to make that process optimized. There's chemical usage and jar testing process to avoid overfeed of coagulant. And we'll see the cost for those chemicals has gone up significantly in a later slide. Recently completed projects. The membrane replacement project was completed earlier this year. So now all 4 trains have been completed, and those are the newer upgraded style membranes, which is a great improvement to the system. The automation, we touched on that. Kind of in that lower right-hand corner there, showing that photo, that's a typical picture of the HMI, the human-machine interface, the screen there at the plant, where you can go through different screens and see, the tank levels, the pump status, the different parts of equipment at the plant. You can monitor and control them through that SCADA system. So, very, very important part of the overall system. Emergency power generation, we just accepted the improvements that were out at the Highland Pump Station. So that's an emergency generator there. The electrical supply system out there has historically had some issues with wind events, storm events. Power goes down, and so then the Highland Pump Station wouldn't be operational, which brings the groundwater to town. So through the Senate Bill 3, you had to make those improvements for backup power, and that's what was completed there for the Highland Pump Station. In addition, the lower left-hand photo there are the mobile generators that have been purchased for the well field. That project is almost complete. We're waiting on a couple of the power cables, which would go from the mobile generator into the groundwater well electrical system. But in the event of a massive power outage, the city will be able to take those mobile generators out to the well field, plug in to the well electrical panel, pump water to the Highland Pump Station. Then you would have the generator at the Highland Pump Station send that to the water treatment plant, and then there's the ongoing generator project at the water treatment plant that would then allow you to treat any of that water, add your disinfection, and power the high service pump station, which would then send it out to town. So all that has been done, funds been put in place, and those improvements made so that we can best position the city in time of a major disaster or a power outage. A little bit more information there on the membrane replacement project. Both phase 1 and 2 have been completed through the Water Development Board funding, and then the 1.7 million gallons a day, which is in alignment with the conjunctive use study. This is the photo here at the Highland Pump Station with the backup generator. The cost at the Highland Pump Station is $162,970, and then the generator at the surface water treatment plant is a higher cost, but it is a much larger unit because it's powering a higher number of pieces of equipment and pumps. So lower left photo there, that's the building that's out there at Highland to store the mobile generators. We want to make sure they were secure. And then there's 6 of those in total. And we will be coming to the city council probably next month, we're hoping, to close out that project. So it is almost complete. The AMI meter replacement project, as I mentioned earlier, it's about 95% or 90% complete. And you will have a customer portal. Right now, the city portal is up, and I believe, Eddie, you guys are able to monitor all the consumption. That's working well, and eventually, when the project is complete, that you'll be able to push that out to the customer side, and each individual customer will be able to log in and see their account, their water usage. It's a really, really neat upgrade for the system, and that's definitely for the customer side. The lead service inventory, we talked about that. Now the city's going to procure equipment to go out and get that inventory completed in advance of the TCEQ requirement. So that's a good step taken there. The remote site at the Booster A and Booster B pump stations, that's ongoing process. And in upcoming months, you will have the final plans for those, which will have to go to the Water Development Board for approval and then to construction. And so that will upgrade those pump stations out there coming from Oak Creek Reservoir. And then there's ongoing water line replacement, as mentioned, with the Water Development Board improvement projects. This is more information on the AMI AMI meter replacement project. Once again, the intent is to have accurate billing, accurate metering of the water going out. We don't want to be overcharging or undercharging, just being accurate. These upgraded meters will be able to do that. Those funds are primarily coming through ARPA funds and city funds. ARPA funds are helping to pay for the generator improvements, but then also a portion of the meter replacement improvements as well. Lead service lines, there are some out in the system, and the intent of this process will be to replace those from on the city side, but then also there's going to be funding available on the customer side as well. We've talked about that in prior council meetings, and there's an application in place right now with the Water Development Board to help fund these improvements. The raw water delivery upgrades, as mentioned at Booster A and Booster B, these pump stations have been in place since, is it about 1950, so we're going on 70 plus years. The electrical improvements are needed. One of the best improvements is going to reduce the voltage from 2400 volts down to 480 volt, which is a much more common and upgraded electrical system. The expected cost using the Water Development Board funds is about $250,000. Those are the locations. You've got Oak Creek down there in the bottom portion of the screen, then Booster A, then Booster B coming to town. And all that brings water from Oak Creek through the booster pump stations, then to the water treatment plant. Water line replacement, as mentioned, that's an ongoing process, and there's about $750,000 in current Water Development Board funds to make those improvements. And that will be a follow-up project to the booster pump station improvement project, utilizing remaining monies. So the future water projects that have been discussed, the Oak Creek raw water transmission line, as mentioned, is approaching 70 plus years old. There are leaks in that line at times. It's concrete cylinder pipe. Some sections of it are very deep, and some sections are it's a fairly large diameter, 18 inch, 16 inch. Yeah. Okay. So it is not that easy for city crews to make those improvements. So you're generally having to hire contractors to come in to make those repairs. And so that is going to be something the city may want to look at funding down the road is ways of upgrading that supply line. Talking with Eddie and his guys, there's differing ways of doing that. Slip lining may be a good option, where you basically go in with a thin wall liner of that pipe and pull it through. And that way you don't have the full cost of total replacement. But when that time comes through the design process, we would look at and analyze, what is the most cost-effective option. You might even bid out both options to see what is most cost-effective. Anyway, that's one project that just needs to be thought about and looked at in the upcoming years for consideration and potential applications for the Water Development Board funding. The leak under the railroad tracks, same situation as Oak Creek. Making those repairs is not easy, and anything underneath the railroad these days is very difficult to address. Railroad keeps a tight control on their right-of-way and how and when repairs are done. And so there's one that the city is looking at over off of, what is that? Poplar and Avenue A. We've contacted the railroad company multiple times looking at different options. We even looked at doing a liner through that pipe instead of having to do a new bore, and they said that was not going to be acceptable. Anything underneath the railroad would have to have a new casing. So that's going to be an upcoming cost and project to be addressed. One interesting thing, I don't know if you've seen it on the news, but it seems like there's more and more train derailments across the nation. And what they're requiring now, anytime you're doing work under their railroad, is we have to have surveyors out there to monitor any deflection in that railroad rail while that construction is ongoing. And there's a tolerance, and they don't want their line moving whatsoever, which is unique because when a train goes across it, that track moves, then. But anyway, they have really increased the amount of scrutiny and oversight on those projects that are going underneath their tracks. So water line replacement has been identified, and then Lake Trammell concrete repairs. So there's been some erosion out there, and that is something that is going to need to be looked at some point before that continues to decrease in structural stability. There's been a project identified about making some repairs out there at the Trammell Dam. Some more photos here of that issue. Concrete around the spillway and the wing walls have experienced some erosion, and so we need to look at making some improvements there. There are some potential grant funds available, but as usually those funds come with a high portion of city match, and so the actual overall cost will be identified and then considered by the city for how that should be funded. Wastewater treatment and collection. So there's the water improvement projects with the Water Development Board, and then there's the wastewater side funding through the Water Development Board. That will include creek crossing there at Neff and Lewis Street. There's been erosion along the embankment, and that pipe is there exposed. So the intent is to have a new alignment and get that out of the creek so that it doesn't pose a threat for damage during a large storm event. Also, with the Water Development Board, wastewater improvements are improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. A whole list here of improvement for the equipment and upgrades. One of them being the sequence batch reactor waste activated sludge piping replacement. That's a lot of terms. We call it the SBR WAS piping, including there the belt press components, UV system upgrades. One thing to come out of this lead and copper regulatory requirements from the TCEQ is going to be additional sampling out in the system. Beginning in January 2024, the system must collect lead, copper, and water quality parameter sampling once every 6 months in an increased number of sites. Begin sampling at schools and child care facilities, and then this is a significant increase in the sampling cost. So that's one thing that's going to be the water department will have to account for in budgeting is that increase in cost for sampling. The conjunctive water use study, we mentioned that was at a cost of approximately $100,000 and helped to identify the best use of those water sources, of its surface water and the groundwater, and how to correctly maximize the utilization. Well field expansion, that's something that came out of the conjunctive water use study. And that is something the city has talked about in prior years, and going down the road is what options would be out there for additional acreage for expanding the well field. And I know there's a current application in with the Water Development Board that could potentially fund that. Don't know what the terms will be. We should hear probably in the next couple of months. Ought to come to the Water Development Board will release those rankings, and then the city would know if that's something that's advantageous to pursue at this time or not. We've mentioned in past years that the regional water plan, specifically in 2021, mentioned having an interconnect with the city of Abilene. Being in the regional water plan does not mean that would happen. It just means that it was an identified project and it would be an option. It doesn't line out any funding or how that would be paid for, but it's just something that was identified. And in future years, we may want to work with the regional water planning group on making sure that is something that is listed as a potential project on the Sweetwater side, not just on the Abilene side, but on the Sweetwater side. But having Oak Creek Reservoir, having your groundwater source, the city of Sweetwater is well positioned, and better positioned, as mentioned, than most cities in this region. So you are fortunate to have those sources. Something about a long-term interconnect would be something well down the road. The conjunctive use study looked at population projections and usage out to 2050. So a project like that would most likely be well on down the road from that point in time, if it ever happened. It is just an option that is on the table that the city could look as for consideration. West Texas Partnership would be in conjunction with that. City of Abilene is looking at differing partnerships throughout this part of the state, Midland, San Angelo, how all of that looks, and water rights and moving water around. And if the city did come up with an agreement with the city for an interconnect, that would all kind of tie together as a potential long-term option for the city of Sweetwater. Rising costs, I mentioned this, with additional treatment of surface water there at the water treatment plant. That is going to be an increased cost, and chemical alone has increased a great deal over the last couple of years. Some of them looking at 50 to 200% cost increased. Not only the cost increase, but getting the chemical, getting parts, pieces, pumps. Some of that has gone into 14 to 18 week lead time. So that's an ongoing challenge faced by the water department. A little bit more information on the cost of the chemical. As you can see here in 21-22, cost was $31,000 for the safety chlorine dioxide generation chemical, and now you're looking at $82,000. The aluminum chlorohydrate cost, ACH, looking at, it was back a couple years ago $18,000, now you're looking at $51,000. Just the cost of chemical alone has gone up significantly. So one thing that Eddie and Justin have worked on, looking at what is the actual cost, going through, taking into all the considerations, what the cost to treat the water is on the water side, looking at $6.93 per thousand, and on the wastewater side, looking at $4.86 per thousand. So we've mentioned multiple times the Water Development Board, they're still the best funding source out there for these projects. The downside is they are overtaxed right now. They're getting more and more money coming from the federal government, which means more projects, but they're losing staff every day. Those staff are having to juggle more. It's just, there is a little bit of a roadblock there. It's a timing concern. Projects are taking longer, but until they are able to hire more people, it's probably going to continue on. We've touched on this in prior years. The training and licensure of your water and wastewater treatment plant operators is key. As you know, all these cities across Texas are facing a lot of the older staff are retiring, and you're having kind of a shortage of younger operators coming up. And so anything that the city can do to encourage that is beneficial. You know, a couple of things listed here like incentives, being competitive with other industries and pay scale, bonuses, merit raises, all that good stuff. You guys have already considered all that. It is just it's something to really beneficial to stay competitive when there's fewer and fewer operators out there to be had. So that's all I have for this summary. If there's any questions or anything you want to talk on, well, willing to do that. But yes, sir.
I thought a couple years ago, several years ago, we were looking at a study, water study over here north of over around the Red Fork or what? Did that ever materialize or anything?
I'm sorry. No, what do you?
The Fork River or something. That there was going to be a study about damming it up or something. Did that ever materialize or?
I don't know that I have background on that.
About that lake over by Alton.
Cedar Ridge Reservoir.
Cedar Ridge.
Okay. Wow. So developing a new reservoir in Texas or anywhere is a large undertaking, huge regulatory requirement, a lot of environmental review, historicological review, all that stuff. So my understanding is the city of Abilene is still looking at that. It is still a potential that they may pursue. A lot of the permitting has been put in place, and it's being reviewed by EPA and all of the regulatory agencies, which it may be a 10-year process for that to be approved. So it is not gone away, and it is still kind of there as an option. That's pretty much all I know about that at this point. Hopefully, they will eventually get approval, and then at that point in time, the city would have the option to decide if they want to fund it or not. But that permitting process is a significant undertaking.
I was just wondering. I remember when they talked about it. I
Yes,
never
sir.
heard anything else about it.
Yeah, I know. You know, a lot of they've cited the location on the river, on the Brazos River, and they have all of that information together. Done a bunch of testing and drilling, and they've submitted it for review, and now it's kind of a waiting game. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you all very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that excellent presentation, Sage. It's gonna be hard act to follow, I guess. My role as city manager is once a year to get up here in front of the council and the community and the staff and talk about where we are in the current year budget and what we're looking at as far as fiscal year 2024 budgeting. And so here we are this morning to do just that. This is the 7th time that I've been able to do this as your city manager. It's hard to believe that I've been here 7 years this month, but time has flown by, and I'm very appreciative of y'all keeping me. That's a good thing, I think, for me anyway. And so I'm very appreciative of that. So we'll just go ahead and get started here. As with everything that we do, everything begins and ends with our mission and value statements. I do want to take this time at the beginning of the presentation to talk a little bit about that. We lead with trust and respect to provide a vibrant, secure community for all. That's something, as you know, that the directors team put together a little bit after I got here about 7 years ago. And so it's still with us. We utilize that mission statement and the corresponding values of professionalism, integrity, continuous improvement, and teamwork to make key decisions as far as hiring and budgeting, especially just all kinds of things. We hearken back to the mission. If we do this that's on the table, does that further our mission or not? And that's a decision that we make when it's appropriate. Speaking of teamwork, I do want to take this opportunity to thank Patty and Mark and her team for helping me to put together this budget presentation and the budget just in general. It's an ongoing process. It really never ends. You know, we kind of say that we're in the budget season in the summer, but as Patty will attest to, it really never ends. It's ongoing year round. And so I do want to take this opportunity to thank Patty and her team for putting this together, and the rest of the directors team that's here as well. Well, we'll kind of start at the 30,000 foot level, looking at all the funds that go into the city budget, including the general fund and the water and wastewater fund, which are the two biggest funds. We'll hone in a little bit on the general fund and the water utilities fund. We'll talk about other items of interest, and there's a lot of them here this morning. We'll go over the budget calendar, and then we'll have an opportunity at the very end to ask any questions that you have of me or the staff. We'll start at the top. Fiscal year 23 revenues for all funds. These are budgeted amounts. These are not actuals. We don't have those numbers yet. Excuse me. But these are revenues for this fiscal year that we're currently in for all of our funds. The taxes and the charges for services are the two bigger sources of revenue for all of the funds. You see the total at the very bottom of about $32.6 million all in. Those are the revenues that we have for every fund in the city. On the expenditure side for all funds for this fiscal year, again, those are budgeted amounts, not actuals. We don't have those yet. Personnel services and contractual services are among the two top expenses that we have as far as the city organization goes. Total expense budget of $38.1 million. Excuse me. Like I said, we'll hold in a little bit on the general fund. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about this. This is our main fund, as you know, in the city of Sweetwater. Our general fund revenue that's budgeted for fiscal year 23, the current fiscal year, taxes is the largest amount, primarily sales and property taxes at $7.9 million. You got the permits and licenses and the charges for services at $2 million, miscellaneous at $1.3 million, for a total general fund revenue budget of about $12.8 million. That's just the general fund revenue. And then you'll see that graphically here portrayed in this pie chart. The taxes of all of the revenues that we bring in, it's about 62% on the taxes. And you're looking at miscellaneous about 10%. That's the second. Charges for services at 2.1. That's 17% of the general fund revenue budget. And then miscellaneous comes in third at about 10% of that general fund revenue budget. To hone in a little bit more on the sales tax side, we've been doing pretty well as far as increasing sales tax year over year since 2019, as this line bar graph represents. 2022, we had about $3.6 million in sales tax come into the general fund. We're really on pace. You'll see that it's right there at about 3.6 in 2023. We're on pace for that. The amount of sales tax that we've that's come into the city to date is about $2 million. We're looking at about 1.6 to come in these last several months of the fiscal year. And if we're right with our projections, our estimates, it's going to be right around what we had last year in 22. And you'll see that here in this chart as well. October through April is already in. We're looking at those numbers. May through September is estimated as far as the city allocation column there. The budgeted amount per month, you just take the yearly budget amount and then divide by 12, and you get 302,325. Like I said, if we're right with our projections from May through September, we're going to bring in about $3.582 million in sales tax. Our budget amount was $3.627 million in sales tax, so right around our budget amount. A little bit lower, about $45,000 out of a $3.6 million budget. It's not too bad. Our property tax rates, as you know, part of the formula for property tax levy is the valuation, and then it's the rate that goes along with that. That's how we calculate the levy. You'll see that Sweetwater is in the very lower part of our 16 peer cities. These are regional cities that are similar in a lot of ways to Sweetwater in terms of population, in terms of geography, in terms of the size of their organization, et cetera, et cetera. And so Sweetwater is currently at 50.75 cents per $100 evaluation. You can see all the way to the very top, Breckenridge is a little over $1. That's, you don't see that a lot with cities. There, you speak more in terms of cents. When you talk about cities, you know, school districts are in the dollars typically. Cities and counties and other districts are usually in the cents. We're at 50.75 cents, right around the very lower part of the table here. So that's not a bad thing. You know, we want to keep taxes low. We want to do everything that we can to create an environment for investment in the community. Part of that is keeping your property tax rates as low as you can and still providing the services that are needed for the community and the business community as well. The preliminary appraisal roll, the total appraised in tax year 22 that was certified, these are certified numbers, $560 million. The preliminary rolls, the preliminary numbers for total appraised values in 2023 is 668 or 669 million. That's a pretty big jump in 1 year, and I know a lot of the folks out there are protesting their values. Maybe some of us here in this room are protesting the values as well. You take out the exemptions, and those aren't final numbers yet. You get a net taxable value in 22 of about 550 million, and in 23, preliminary numbers are about 660 million or so. That's an increase in net taxable value of about $110 million in 1 year. That's a pretty good size jump. Our tax rate currently of about 51 cents. We're looking at a rate in 23 of about 44 cents. That's because the values jumped up so significantly, we're able to lower the rate. The tax levy, which all that means is that's the money that's coming into the city in terms of property tax revenue. Once you do all the calculations and everything is settled as far as the certified values, our tax levy in 22 was about $2.8 million. We're looking at a preliminary tax levy in 23 of about 2.9. So that's $139,406 increase. But like I said, everything is still in flux. The appraisal district is still working on getting us certified values. That'll happen sometime next month in July. Our preliminary no new tax rate is 42 cents, and the preliminary voter approval rate is 44 cents. So we're going to recommend to the council that we come in with our final rate for the city of Sweetwater right around the preliminary voter approval rate of 44 cents. This is, it's a little tricky. There's a lot of numbers up here, but I'll try to simplify it for everybody. What we're looking at right now is a tax rate impact if the tax note for a fire ladder truck is approved by this council, and we'll be bringing this item to y'all here in the next several months. Our recommendation is to issue certificates of obligation to pay for that fire truck, which right now is about a $2.1 million piece of apparatus. If we issued it in 2023, you're looking at the adopted maintenance and operations rate of 44 cents, like I mentioned in the previous slide. The required interest and sinking tax rate to pay off that $2.1 million note in the first year is about 6.39 cents per $100 evaluation, which brings your total tax rate to about 51 cents. And we decrease the required INS tax rate in year 2 to about 3 pennies, which reduces the total tax rate, including the certificates of obligation on the truck, to about 47 cents. And for the rest of the term until it matures, you're hovering around 48 cents. When you take the M&O tax rate, which is a regular tax rate of 44 cents today, and add that interest and sinking rate to pay off the note for the fire truck, you're hovering around 47, 48 cents. So that's not a bad deal. We're looking at that and trying to firm up the numbers and firm up this project parameters so that we can bring it to the council at a later date. But that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So just to give you a glimpse of what that could mean for the taxpayer here in Sweetwater. Let me take a sip of water here. Next slide is the revenue summary on sales taxes and property taxes. The next sales tax allocation report is due to the city July 14th. Staff will continue to monitor the impacts of sales tax revenue as we always do, and we want to encourage everybody, right, Karen, to shop Sweetwater. Keep our tax dollars local, because we use those tax dollars, we need those tax dollars to put those to good use to create a good environment, a good livability to the community. On the property tax side, the certified tax roll that I talked about is due to the entities by July 25th, so that's next month. And the effective and the rollback rates for us will be calculated by that same date. Now on the expenditure side for the general fund in fiscal 23, our current fiscal year, these are budgeted amounts again, they're not actuals. General government at about $1.8 million. Public safety is a big chunk of that, of our expenses, right around $7 million in the general fund. Public works is a big one as well, for a total general fund expenditure budgeted amounts for 23 is about $12.8 million. And you see that here graphically on this pie chart. Public safety it's been hovering for the last several years about 52% of general fund expenditures for public safety. That includes, of course, police and fire. Right now it's about 55% in this fiscal year. Public works at about 1.4, that's 11%. Culture and recreation, the same, about 11%. And then general government is in second place, I guess you could call it, at 14%. Unanticipated expenses, these pop up from time to time. Every fiscal year we have unanticipated expenses that aren't in the budget, but for one reason or another we need to get these projects done in the current fiscal year and then fix those amounts in the revised budget at the end of the year. That's what we're going to do. The Harley-Davidson police motorcycle and the equipment associated with that came in at about $10,500. I think that's a good deal for the community. We got that motor used from the city of Abilene Police Department, so they made us a really good deal on that, our friends over there. The new corporal position and additional SRO in the police department at about $13,000. Motor repair to a police unit transmission was $14,000. Canine conversion kits for 2 police units, again at $14,000. The pickleball court, I think, is going to be a very exciting project for our community, right around $50,000. And development project professionals at an additional $20,000. So the total for unanticipated expenses in fiscal year 23 is $121,125. And then these are the fun slides. These are the wants and the needs of the staff. So we wanted to put them in a table for y'all to take a look at. We always start off with the merit-based pay for all non-civil service employees. That's always at the top of this table. So we can talk about giving the cost of living adjustment to the employees, which have over the year worked to deserve that. We're looking at a 5.5% increase in the cost of living for employees' salaries. And the theory behind that number is inflation right now is about 5% or so. It's down from what it was a year ago. It was 7, 8, 9% a year ago. But we're looking at 5% and then an additional small amount on top of that just to try to stay ahead of inflation and those inflationary pressures that we're all dealing with. So 5.5 is where we've landed as a staff. Of course, the council has final authority on that, but we are going to be recommending a 5.5% increase to employee salaries for fiscal 24. Human resources software, the street seal coat project, that's an important project. We took several years off several years ago, but now we're back on and hope to get that on a regular schedule. But that does cost money, $225,000 if we hope to do it in fiscal 24. Software for the cemetery to better keep up with what's going on out there. 2 outfitted police vehicles at $120,000, updated police firearms at $50,000, land purchase for expanding the police parking lot at $65,000. I mentioned the fire department ladder truck at about $2.1. There's a pumper truck that we need to get at some point. I don't know that we're going to be able to do that this year because we're buying the ladder truck, hopefully. But at some point in the near future, we're going to need another pumper truck. Those came in a little more than we anticipated at $1.2 million. A training vehicle for the fire department at $88,000. An additional ambulance at $265,000. Those things are not cheap. Outdoor warning sirens at $30,000. The firefighter rescue device at $10,000. An additional animal control vehicle at $70,000. A mesh canopy shade for outdoor fitness equipment at $60,000. So you'll see that it's not only police and fire that drives these expenses. It's the recreation side, the park side. We try to distribute the money as best as we can throughout the different programs that we have here at the city. Jones and Fraley Park scoreboards at $10,000. That's a relatively inexpensive item with a lot of good impact for the folks that use those fields out there. A SNAP copier and printer at $5,800. Wellfield improvements and upgrades, $202,000. Anytime you talk about water, Eddie, you're talking about expensive type projects, but it's all worthwhile. Water is life, and we need it to survive, literally. And so that's a good use of city funds to put that back into the water and wastewater plant, like Sage described earlier. The Texas Water Development Board 2020 project completion of about $6 million. Total estimated cost for all of the projects that we're looking at for fiscal 24 is about $14 million. And so I think we're in good shape. This is a good list of projects. I like them because they're not only police and fire and water, but we're trying to spread it out, like I mentioned, to some of the other areas of the city that we have responsibility for. The current fund balance in the different funds, that's year to date as of the end of April of this year. General fund, you have an ending fund balance of about $4.6 million. That's an increase of $784,000. The previous fiscal year expended, there's a formula that we use as per policy that we have to have 25% of prior year expenditures in reserve. The prior year expenditures was $11.4 million approximately, and 25% of that number is 2.8, and so we've met that threshold. What we have above that amount is about another 1.8. So we've met our 25% policy, our threshold. What we have above that is about $1.8 million. So if we're going to use, we have the opportunity to use some of those $1.8 million to fund some of the projects that I just spoke about. On the water and sewer fund, we're very healthy. The beginning fund balance is about $28 million. Unrestricted funds and savings of about $7 million. EMS has always been a little bit of a challenge for us as far as the fund balance and the way that the fund is, how healthy it is. EMS, we got a beginning fund balance of about 2.6 in the red, and that's where we are with the ending fund balance year to date, about 2.6. On the refuse side, a beginning fund balance of about $450,000, and that's an increase in the last 7 months of about $131,000. So the budget issues for the general fund, of course, always the impact of the sales tax. We got to review the general fund balance, that amount above the 25% that I just spoke about. Review our property tax rate. Do you all want to go up to the rollback rate, or kind of let's see what the council wants to do on that. Our recommendation will be the 44 cents per 100. Extensive review of all rates, fees, and fines. We're always tweaking, the fee schedule. And we'll bring that to the council at the appropriate time with those tweaks. We're always looking to tweak the rates and the fees and the fines and all that. Continue to look for efficiencies with limited impact on services. I think that's the key, with limited impact on services. The folks, and I understand this is not unique to Sweetwater, but any city that you're in, people want to have low tax rates, and that's typically a good thing for investment in the community. At the same time, they don't want their services to go down any. They want high services and low taxes, and that's just kind of the psychology of being a citizen and a taxpayer in any city. Water and sewer rate increase for bond projects and funding solutions for capital projects, especially streets. That's something that we'll have to have a conversation about in fiscal 24 as far as how we're going to fund our not our seal coating project. I think we can fund that with general fund monies coming in, but as far as the reconstructions of a lot of the roadways that we have in Sweetwater, what was on the ballot a couple of years ago that failed, those projects still remain, and they've only gotten worse progressively over the last couple of years. So Sage and I were talking. We went after $8 million to fix XYZ streets. Those same XYZ streets are about $9 million probably in cost now, and they're just going to continue to go up and continue to go up. So what would have cost us $8 million a couple of years ago to fix is probably going to cost about 10 by the time we put it on the ballot again for the citizens to vote on. On the water side, like I said, we're very healthy on the water side. We've got revenues of about $10 million, expenses of about 14, an unreserved amount of about 22 million, and a reserved amount of about 2.25. Revenues and other financing sources, these are budgeted amounts for fiscal 23. Charges for services, that's by far the largest revenue source that we have, is what people pay for the water, what people pay us for the water. That's close to about $9 million in a total wastewater, water and wastewater fund revenue budget amount of about $9.8–10 million. Our top 10 water consumers for fiscal year ending in 22. The city of Brant is our largest water consumer. As far as consumption goes, the amount billed, you'll see, does not go along with that, but that's because of the contract that we have to sell water to the city of Brant at 5 cents per thousand, something like that, Eddie. So they're getting a heck of a deal, and we're not so much. That we got ourselves years ago stuck in that, and that's where we are. So they're the biggest consumer, but they pay about $7,000 for their water, which seems very, very unfair, but that's what it is. USG, by contrast, doesn't use as much water, but it's in the neighborhood, and they're paying us about $900,000 for a similar amount of water. So if Brant was paying per thousand is what USG is paying, it'd probably be close to about $1 million in water. Instead, they're paying about $7,000, just to put that in perspective. And then there's the rest of our top water consumers for fiscal year ending 22. These are comparisons of water rates to our average peer population, cities in a population size of 10,000 to 15,000. There's 30 cities that we compare ourselves to within that population parameter. This is as a part of the 2023 TML rate survey. On the residential side, for 5,000 and 10,000 gallons of usage, we are 16% over our peer group for 5,000 and 41% over our peer group for the 10,000 gallons worth of usage in a month. On the wastewater side for residential, 5 and 10,000 again, we're 23% over on 5, 14% over the peer group average on 10. On the commercial side for water usage, water consumption, 50,000 and 200,000 gallons, we're 26% over on 50,000 and 29% over the peer group for 200,000. Commercial side again for wastewater usage, here's where it differs a little bit. For the 50,000 gallons worth of usage on the sewer side, we're below the peer group average by 6.2%. And then for 200,000 gallons, we're below the peer group average by about 26%. Though that's fairly significant. I think all these charts are telling us is that if we're going to make some adjustments, it might be on the wastewater side for commercial users. And then on the expense side for the water and wastewater fund, billing and collections, about $3 million worth of expenses. Source of supply, 3.3 or so. The purification plant at 2 million. Water distribution at about 1.7. Wastewater treatment at about 1.7. Debt service, interest, and fees at about $2 million. For a total water and wastewater fund expenditure budget in the current fiscal year of about $14.1 million. And here are some certificates of obligation that were issued all the way going back to 2014 to 2021, and when they mature in that third column, the amount of the issuance, and then the bond principal payable. We've issued about $20 million in the last 7-8 years on the water wastewater side of COs, and the bond principal payable on those is about $11 million. And so it's good. I mean, this is a good thing. We're getting into debt, but it's good debt. It's in the water fund, so the consumers of water and wastewater in the city of Sweetwater pay for that. with the rates the way that they're structured. And so imagine if we had put this on the ballot and the voters said, no, you're not doing any of these projects like they did with streets. And so the well field development's out, the elevated storage tank and system improvements is out, the water system, wastewater plant improvements are out. They weren't done because the voters said no. We'd be in a heck of a lot of trouble at that point, wouldn't we, Eddie? Heck of a lot of trouble. And so it's good that the council is issuing COs because you understand how important water and wastewater is to the community. We, to put it on the ballot and leave it up to the voters is typically a good thing, especially in the general fund. On the water wastewater side, it's not typically done that way. It's typically done through the issuance of certificates of obligation, like we do. That's all to say that the council has done a good job of issuing those COs over time, and getting these projects done and improving the system and improving the reliability of water and wastewater for the citizens of Sweetwater. Other items of interest, EMS, there's a lot of red on this, as there always is. EMS is a tough one. It's heavily subsidized by the taxpayers of Sweetwater, by the general fund. You see the city transfers in 18 of about, it hovers around $500,000 or so. 2023 budgeted was about $600 city transfers into the EMS fund. And then the fund balance is what it is. The chief and I have talked to a consultant about them coming in and doing a thorough analysis of our EMS fund and letting us know what tweaks we can make, large and small, to try to get out of the red. And I don't think we need to be making money necessarily off of EMS, but more of a break-even type of scenario wouldn't be a bad thing. It certainly beats, what we have in place right now. And so we'll continue to monitor this and bring some recommendations to the council, hopefully in fiscal '24. The employee benefit.
I recommend that the county dash to help fund that.
Okay.
Also,
Yes, sir.
since they share the deficit.
We can definitely put that on the list. That's a good idea. So that's EMS. The employee benefit fund, I think we're in a good spot. It just kind of depends year to year what happens to the employees and those that are on our insurance. If there's a heart attack or an organ transplant, or dialysis is very expensive, those kinds of things. If those pop up, we could have a bad year if we stay relatively healthy as an organization, as a group. That could lead to us having a better year. And so our fund balance, you see, kind of dipped in 19, but it's back on track a little bit more in 22, and hopefully in 23 and beyond. Hotel motel tax, we took a pretty good size hit in 20 and 21 because of COVID. There just wasn't the activity within the community that people were coming in and spending money on hotel rooms and restaurants and all that. But 22 bounced back in a pretty big way, all the way up to about $710,000 in hotel motel tax, and we're looking for a similar continued really rebound in 23, 24 and beyond. A little bit about the budget calendar. The workshop is taking place right now, June 13th. On July 25th, like I mentioned earlier, the chief appraiser certifies the tax rolls and calculates the effective and the rollback rates. August 8th is the notice of the public hearing on the budget that goes into the newspaper. Also on that date, the notice of property tax rates and dates for 2 public hearings. August 8th, again, proposed budget presented to the city council, and we set the public hearings for September 12th. On September 12th, we have the public hearings and the readings and adopt appropriation ordinance, rate schedule, budget ordinance to amend the fiscal '23 budget. The next week on the 19th, we have the reading and adoption of the ordinance to set and rate levying the tax rate. And then we begin our fiscal year '24 on October 1st. And gentlemen, that's all I had. If you have any questions, we're glad to work as a team to answer those. It's a lot to think about, a lot to ponder. I know. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.